Hi everyone, welcome back to Leandra the TBR Zero. My goal is to slowly but surely lessen my physical TBR one book at a time. Today I am talking about Murder After Christmas by Rupert Latimer, and I will be including a book review in my bullet journal. I received this book as an ARC thanks to Poisoned Pen Press in the United States, but you can also see this book being published by the British Library Crime Classics in the UK and abroad. It has been quite a while since I have posted a bullet journal video. That's because I've actually been playing catch up for the past few months because life got crazy. I started school again, I was teaching, I was working. So unfortunately, the bullet journal had to take a back seat for a while, and so I've been trying to fill in the pages I've been missing, return to some books that I've had to review and wasn't having the time to do it during the moment. So here we are though in November, and I am back at it. I have pretty much gotten used to a particular flow, a particular design for my book reviews at this point. There have been slight changes over the year, but you will pretty much be seeing me making a very similar template as the one that is to the left page, which is The Wrong Murder by Craig Rice. You may have also noticed that I've actually read 3 books in November so far, but I only have 1 book review finished, and I will be adding a second today. That's because I don't always dedicate a full book review page to every single book I read. I am not as passionate about every single book I end up reading, whether it be absolutely adoring it or absolutely hating it. So sometimes when a book is a bit middle of the road for me personally, I just don't take the time to write a book review for it. And that was the case for Tied Up in Tinsel by Niall Marsh. For Craig Rice's The Wrong Murder, though, as you can see, I absolutely loved it. It was such a fun time. Craig Rice has become one of my favorite authors, specifically for Golden Age American detective fiction. So I was personally not surprised when I ended up giving this book 5 stars. For the book that I'll be reviewing today, though, you can see that I'm starting off with a border that is exactly identical to the one on the left-hand side. That's because I like to have that type of uniformity. Interestingly, though, you may notice that on the left-hand side, I used some hatching to actually cover up a mistake that I made. I apparently was just not paying attention when I was trying to design a border, and so I then had to fix and put out a fire or two to make it look a bit more normal, and I think it ended up working out quite well, and now I'll be following with that design of the hatching inside the box throughout the entire month. And this is one among many reasons why someone may choose not to do a bullet journal, or they're hesitant to start one because mistakes do get made. I will say that I could have avoided this if I stenciled out with pencil my book reviews first. People do that. I'm just a bit of a rebel, I guess, in the bullet journal world. I'm similar in the case of crosswords as well. I have always done my crosswords in pen, and people think I'm crazy, but it's something I inherited from my father. And you know what? What's the point of life without a few risks, right? So I just go off and freehand everything in my journal, and naturally, that means I have to accept certain mistakes will be made, and I have to fix them to the best of my ability. And I actually have learned to not mind it. It's stressful at the time when I realize I've made a mistake, but then I'm usually satisfied with how I've found a way to fix it in some way, or at least live with it. And that's coming from someone who is typically a perfectionist. So I'm quite proud of myself with how I've been able to handle the ups and downs of having a bullet journal. Another reason someone may be hesitant towards starting a bullet journal is the fact that life does get chaotic, and suddenly you're having this additional responsibility that you've put on yourself, this obligation, this commitment to journal for an entire year, and you may worry that things will get too busy, months will go by, and suddenly it just won't be worth it to catch up like the way I had to do. And that's understandable. But then maybe what you might want to do is simply have there be less of a strict guideline of saying I must review every single book. That's helped me personally. For instance, if I were to review every single book, then that would be far more straining time-wise, especially if I'm reviewing a book that I actually didn't care very much about, and to write an entire page on that is just not realistic for me. I had to switch up my design a little bit because I didn't think that the author name would fit in the uppermost right-hand side, so I did slide it underneath the title and then proceeded to include the various details that I like to add. I personally like to include when I started the book and when I finished it. That ties in nicely to my calendar that involves the days of the month and what I read on that day. I also include the year of publication for Murder After Christmas. This was published in 1944. That might be interesting to those who are World War II buffs, because this book is set during World War II, obviously, and it actually plays quite a pivotal role because it impacts the characters' lives. They're having a Christmas party, but they have to be aware of certain rations. They have to be aware of energy resources, making sure that they black out the lights when they're meant to do so. So it did add a very interesting atmosphere on top of the Christmas cheer, because this event happens leading up to Christmas, during Christmas, and obviously, as the title suggests, after Christmas. Surprise, surprise, I ended up giving this book 5 stars, and I suppose I'm joking about it, but I actually was quite surprised that I would give it 5 stars because I didn't really know much about the author and I didn't really know what to go into thinking about him. The introduction, written by Martin Edwards, was actually really fascinating, and it made me really intrigued by the author and wanting to read more about him, but it doesn't seem like we know very much about him. He also isn't very prolific. He didn't publish very many works, but this one definitely was so fun. He's so humorous, and I love it when a detective fiction novel can infuse humor, especially metafictional humor, joking about the idea of a murder. Obviously, murder isn't funny in real life, but when it comes to fiction, especially detective fiction in the Golden Age, it was very common for authors to be self-referential, reference the genre, and kind of make it a bit silly, this idea of a murder happening amongst the family. This backdrop actually happens with a lot of different tropes. So not only is it during Christmas, not only is it during World War II, but we have this inheritance trope going on, which I think is typical for Christmas stories. Usually there is this distant relative or an elderly patriarch, more often than not, who is destined to die soon, but his will is in question, or his will is about to be changed, and obviously that ends up leading to many, many suspects. But what's especially fascinating about this story is that for various reasons, it actually would not have been advantageous for anyone for this man, Uncle Willie, as they call him, to have died after Christmas. It would have been far better for many people involved if he actually died before Christmas. So that ends up leading our Superintendent Cully and his various, investigators and detectives, both professional and amateur, who are helping him to understand why exactly Uncle Willie was murdered after Christmas. Was it a mistake? Was he meant to die before and just happened to die after? And so just it goes into utter insanity. I really liked the family that it tends to focus on, because this happens at the Redpath's home, and the Redpaths are just quite loony people. They joke about how they've always wanted to murder Uncle Willie, not even for his money, because at the time they just wouldn't have really inherited anything. He's supposed to give all of his money away to his 3rd or 4th wife's children, so really they aren't even going to gain anything, but they always joked about murdering him just because of him being annoying and an ornery old man. So then when he dies at their Christmas party, they are like, you've got to be kidding me. What is going on? And so it's just craziness. I really enjoyed the humor. I enjoyed the fact that I rooted for Superintendent Cully, this very rational man. I really wanted him to succeed in finding the killer, but I also enjoyed how the very zany, odd, unusual characters that he's investigating keep stumping him, and every new clue he gains, every new suspect that he investigates, it actually muddles the waters even more and confuses him even more. And so I really enjoyed how much he got frustrated and just being like, how am I ever going to untangle this? Like, the more I look into it, the more insane this entire family seems. So that was really enjoyable. I am currently designing a Santa Claus. I wanted it to be very nondescript, kind of like a silhouette, so you won't see me designing too many features, and it actually does turn out quite well. I feel like once I include the bottom half of his face, it becomes questionable. I don't think it looks as good as it did before, but trust me, trust the process. Once I add the accent of the pink, then all should be well. I usually add some type of design, some type of graphic when I'm drawing out a different book review, and I try to make the image of some type of importance. Either it's a callback to the cover itself, or it involves something very important to the story. For The Wrong Murder, for instance, I included 2 champagne glasses with wedding rings beneath them, and I do that because 2 of the main characters, this is book 3, they have been struggling to finally get together romantically and get married, and this is the book where it happens, but of course other things happen as well, and I won't get into it because this isn't a book review about that book in particular, but that's why I included it, especially because Craig Rice is known for including a lot of drinking, a lot of alcohol. I'm assuming it's because 1940s, not long after Prohibition ended in the United States, and so that's why we see a lot of American authors tending to include alcohol to a ridiculous amount in our, according to modern day, it's a ridiculous amount, but it's just because I think that was a really historically significant and affecting event that happened. So you'll see a lot of authors during that time demonstrating that in their writing. But for the Santa Claus, it is not only a Christmas image, obviously, but Santa Claus is important to the story because Uncle Willie, he dressed up as Santa Claus for the Christmas party. He, surprised the children, this big festive event, and he ended up giving out presents and then departing off into the cold winter air, and then he ends up being discovered the next day in the lawn, in the snow, deceased. And so that's why I thought it would be fun to include a Santa Claus image, because it's more important than there simply just being, Christmas will include Santa Claus. For instance, Agatha Christie's novel Hercule Poirot's Christmas, it's something else in the United States. I think it's called A Holiday for Murder or something like that. But anyway, it would be silly to include an image of Santa Claus if I were to write a review for that book, because even though it happens during Christmas, it really has nothing to do with Christmas. It has nothing to do with Santa Claus. He does not make an appearance, whereas he does make an appearance multiple times, I might add, in Murder After Christmas, and so that's why I included it there. I think that this book would be perfect for those who want a cozy mystery at Christmas where it genuinely does give you all of the Christmas vibes while also taking you away. It's very interesting to read a classic Christmas story set in a different time. I personally don't have much interest in modern Christmas stories. I'm not someone who really enjoys Hallmark Christmas stories, and that's not even because they're romance, and I'm not someone who tends to really read or watch romance entertainment, but I just like the idea of being away from the amount of technology we have. For instance, these characters obviously don't have cell phones, they don't have computers, they are very much in the moment, and anything you have to do or research is pretty much on the ground. Superintendent Cully has to traipse across the countryside and into town to find his various witnesses, his various suspects. He even at one point moves into the house upon the Redpath's request, which again is insane because he's like, is this a double bluff? Why are they inviting me in? Do they want me to prove that they didn't do it, or do they want me to come in so that I find evidence that someone else has been planted? And it's utter nonsense and craziness. But anyway, so he moves into the house where the murder actually happened. They set him up in the room of the deceased Uncle Willie, which again, for some reason that tickles me that he's in the room of the murdered victim. And he is constantly analyzing mince pies because the victim ate mince pies before and after Christmas and during, and then there are the chocolates. There is a snowman out in the yard. He's wondering if any of this has anything to do with the fact that old Saint Nick or good old Uncle Willie ended up dying after Christmas. And it's really good fun. I think that there's a lot of humorous lines. The dialogue is just spot on and super cheeky and really sharp. But Rupert Latimer also infuses these interesting ideas. He at one point has these various characters mentioning the importance of secrets at Christmas, that secrets aren't good unless it's at Christmas. For some reason, the idea that at Christmas it's okay to be secretive. And if you think about it, we do tend to lean towards that. We're being secretive about the gifts we're giving. We're being secretive towards our children because I'm sorry if I have to divulge this to anyone who believes the contrary, but Santa Claus isn't real. But we're lying to the children about this. We're lying about the idea that you need to be good at Christmas in order not to get coal. So it is quite interesting to think about that, but in respect to murder, obviously. And there was this other interesting sentiment in the book where they discuss the idea of when and how you can be a good liar. And I believe it was Miss Redpath, who's the mother of Frank Redpath, the owner of the house. And she says something to the effect that you can be a good liar if you know what the truth is. Like, you have to know what the truth is to be a good liar. Or the only way you can be a good liar is if you think you know the truth. So it's almost as if like unintentional lies are involved in here too, because there are some characters who they don't even realize that they're lying to Superintendent Cully, but they are because the truth isn't exactly what it is in their minds. I don't know. It was really fascinating. I loved it so much. It was a Netgalley digital ARC, so I don't own it, but you can bet that I intend to because of how much I loved it. A lovely, lovely Christmas story. I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to get into the season, and I also think it would be a great gift. So if you know someone who loves Christmas stories at Christmas, especially for murder enthusiasts, highly recommended. Thank you everyone for watching my video. I hope you have a lovely day, a lovely Christmas season. I would love to see comments if you have any. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day, everybody. Bye!